There's a there's a date which I check out every year. It's called the 9th of Av. It's from the Jewish calendar, which is completely different than the Julian calendar that we're under. That date moves around on the calendar. Now, the 9th of Av was actually yesterday, but it can go into like the 15th of August. It's amazing how it floats from year to year. So I always look at it and you say, well, why do you do that, L.A.? Who cares about the 9th of Av? The 9th of Av historically has had great consequences for Israel and the Jewish people. And the reason why I am so fascinated by this, the first and second temples were both destroyed on the 9th of Av. You really think that's a coincidence? In 1492, the Jews were expelled from Portugal on the 9th of Av. They were expelled from England on the 9th of Av. The death trains carrying Jews to the death camps began on the 9th of Av. It just goes on and on and on. It's chilling, absolutely chilling. So Israel and Jews all over the world look at the 9th of Av as a day of calamity. Now, I'm not Jewish, but I have a great respect for Israel. Why am I so interested? Because prophecy tells us, ancient prophetic texts tell us that in the end of days, in the last days, I will gather you, the Jews, from all over the earth and reestablish you in your ancient homeland. I mean, go figure. Has anything happened like that? Think about the Manhattan Indians going back to Manhattan. Hi, we're back. We want the land. And it's absurd. And yet after almost 2,000 years of diaspora, the nation of Israel, after the birth pains of the Holocaust, is born in a day. So if you don't find that fascinating, then, you know, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. With the current state of a Temple Mount and the growing anti-Semitism, think the imam in my state, California, who stated that the Jews should be annihilated, i.e. killed. Let me stop right there. Folks, I mean, you know, you talk about this hate speech. I mean, this imam stands up in a mosque, and make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it. This is really the face of Islam. Make no mistake. Absolutely. Well, they're radical. No, no, no. This is an imam in my state of California telling his congregation that they should run out and annihilate the Jews. And there's a reason for this. There's a reason for the vitriol, for the hatred. And it goes back to the fact that out of the Jews came the Messiah. That's a 3-hour conversation. I could go down that rabbit trail maybe some other time. Of course, the fiery imam apologized, but let's set the record straight. He did this only to ease the firestorm he created. Do we think for 1 second that this imam really believes this or means what he just said? Of course not. He's spouting the hatred he was raised with and will continue to do so. Make no mistake about it, folks. Make no mistake about it. This vitriol, this anti-Semitism, the virulent anti-Semitism is not about to go away anytime soon. Also remember that the imam is allowed to lie to the infidel, which is us. In closing, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Every now and then, something slips out. See the picture behind me? That's Ralph Glidden standing in a recently excavated grave. It was my discovery out on Catalina Island. This clip and my discovery was actually used by the Vieira brothers for their season finale, In Search of the Lost Giants, and which I was very honored to do. But here's the deal with all this stuff, which is, in my opinion, just incredible. That when you look at that giant in that picture, I had it analyzed by 3 people. That thing was 9 feet, just under 9 feet tall. Now, that picture was laying in the archives. It had been in the archives, and what I mean by that is it's in a folder, wrapped in plastic in a folder, placed in a museum box, placed in a vault, sealed vault. So I get access to these records, and I go over to Catalina Island at the museum there, and I spend about 10 hours combing through all of Ralph Glidden's records, and I discovered a whole bevy of pictures, a whole cache of pictures, which had nothing but out-of-place artifacts in them. The fact that there's a 9-footer there should raise your eyebrows just a little bit, because that shouldn't be there. And of course, what was interesting is when we went back to the museum, about 6 to 8 months later, and this is after that piece had aired on the History Channel, they had redacted the picture. And the picture that you see behind me, the top picture, shows just Ralph Gooden standing in the grave, but the giant's been cut out, redacted. According to Chief Joseph, my friend and part of our team, he went back to the museum fairly recently, and they have the whole picture back up there. Go figure. Maybe it's because I went viral, or the actual, I did a PPS report on this and said, you know, what are these guys trying to hide? You know, why not just put the picture up there? Nephilim 6 fingers. If you look at the skeleton, which is in that grave, count the fingers. You'll see the right hand's up like this. The thumb is out of view. 6 fingers. There are 6 fingers in that skeleton. L.A., why do you care so much? Because the biblical prophetic narrative tells us that when the Nephilim were present, sometimes there were giants. Giantism happened, 9, 10, 12 footers. Og, king of Bashan. Thousands of years ago, this guy lived. He might have been as tall as 15 feet, which is absolutely off the charts. Most biblical expositors will place him around 12 and Goliath around 9 to 10. Skeleton behind me, 9 feet. So we've got, and many of these skeletons had 6 fingers. Now there's a genetic predisposition called polydactylism, which basically means that, okay, so you can be born with a 6th finger. I get that. And some people are born with 6 fingers and 6 toes. That doesn't mean that they're Nephilim. We're not saying that. But it's one of the genetic characteristics that seem to go in line with the Nephilim. So that being as it may, so I found this incredibly interesting, and I thank the person who sent me the photo. I was there on the site, but I didn't blow it up. And when you blow it up, you know, you can just blow it up on any computer. You can see plainly that that skeleton has 6 fingers. So it'll be interesting to see if we ever see that picture again, or what happens to that picture. And now we've got this picture from a grave in Israel, and it's got 6 fingers. When I was out in Catalina Island, we saw another 9-footer, just under 9 feet, again with 6 fingers. So we've got elongated skulls out on Catalina Island. We've got 6 fingers. We've got 9-footers, just under 9 feet. What are we to make of this? It gives you an idea, folks, that in my opinion, the Nephilim were on the earth, because I've had other reports of people coming to me and telling me about shooting down these giants, both in Iraq and also Afghanistan. What are we to make of this? This is in modernity, 2002. The shooter brings this thing down. So look, folks, the planet that we're on, the history that we have been taught, has been deliberately obfuscated from us. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. It's been managed. Chuck Missler calls it a managed agenda, and that's exactly what it is. It's a carefully managed agenda. You know, I had a friend of mine who's an archaeologist told me about a Japanese film crew who volunteered to show the Egyptians how the pyramids were made. So the Egyptians said, come on down. So a Japanese film crew came down, and all their, you know, tech guys and the Egyptians gave them copper saws and have at it with the limestone. So the first thing they did is they started sawing through the limestone. They couldn't cut the limestone. So they bring in diamond blade saws and they cut a few blocks, and then they got to move them. So they get the papyrus, you know, the palm rollers and all this, and they can't move the blocks. So they bring in a crane and they wrap this thing up and put it on a flatbed truck and move the flatbed truck down to the Nile, where there's a replica of a papyrus boat, and they gently, you know, bring this thing over and lower it in the papyrus boat, which promptly sinks. So they were immediately ushered out of the country. Stop filming, don't do this, because it doesn't work. And yet Egyptologists tell us over and over and over again, this is how the pyramids were built. In my opinion, it's nonsense. It cost me $800 to get a permit to re-drill a well on my own property. This is when government sucks. This is when government is not for the people, it's against the people. This is when government is so bloated and so full of itself that it won't allow a homeowner to re-drill a well. And it took me 4 months and $800 to get the permit. And I'm trucking in water for a family of 4 at that time. That's years ago when I still had the kids here. The kids were small then. You think that's fair? You think that's fair? The fire department has to come down and they have to declare, yes, Mr. Marzulli, your oak tree is dead. Here's your permit to cut the oak tree. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And I know this is going to offend some people, but you got to listen to this. And yet in the state of California, as a 16-year-old girl, I can go in and kill my unborn baby in my womb without a written consent from anybody. And yet, in the state of California, if I have a condor egg here and I smash the condor egg, whoa, I go to jail with a huge fine. Why? Because everyone knows that that condor egg has been fertilized, and that condor egg has value, and that condor egg will eventually become a condor. But somehow, with the loony left, and liberalism is a disease, never forget it, with the loony left, somehow they can't cross that Rubicon. They can't understand that that child inside a woman's womb is alive, is alive. It's not just a mass of cells, it's alive. It has a heartbeat. And yet, a 16-year-old can go down without anything from her parents, nothing, and just get an abortion on demand. That's how crazy we are. That's how crazy. And I know the people are like, oh, it's a woman's right to choose, blah, 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 blah. Really? Really? And that's why 1 billion aborted children on the planet, 1 billion since Roe v. Wade, 1 billion with a B. And that leads us into the supernatural, because that's a blood curse over this planet. Don't ever forget that, folks. And that's why, in my opinion, and I'm going way out on a limb, I don't care. Turn it off if you don't want to listen. That's why there's a blood curse over the land. And that's why we see the insanity happening on this planet. And it's going to get worse and worse and worse as time goes on. So all you tree huggers out there, better wake up. Better wake up. Somehow I have to call the fire department and get a permit to cut down an oak tree which is dead in my front yard, side yard, excuse me. I have to have them come down. The government has to come down and tell me it's okay to cut down the flipping oak tree. That's how wacko we are. That's how upside down everything. We're good as evil and evil is good. And so liberals, they're okay at one point as long as you agree with them. But the moment you disagree and you take some of the stances that I've taken to tonight, oh my gosh, oh, I'm so offended. Get over yourself. Thanks for watching, folks. Remember, I'll see you on the air or in the air. Good night, everybody.